Hello, and welcome to the pilot episode of Sitting Ovation, a podcast about who the interesting people who make theater happen are, what they do, and why they do it. We're your hosts, Bailey Sheehan,
Elizabeth Miller,
and Matt Faragasso.
We'd like to welcome you to our show, but before we get started, we'd like to take this opportunity to respectfully acknowledge that we are hosting this podcast from the traditional lands of the Lenni Lenape people, and we pay our respects to elders both past and present.
Today, you'll be getting to know the three of us, who we are, what we do, why we do it. I'll kick us off with the first question to the group. How did you get started in theater?
So, Elizabeth, how did you get started in theater? What's your journey?
I first took my big dive into theater on stage when I was a small child, doing a dance recital. But I didn't really get involved with theater properly until I was in my mid-20s, when I went back to college to get my undergrad after a little bit of a hiatus from school. And I thought I was going to be a history major. And I decided to try theater because I'd always kind of been interested. And I got a history minor and I majored in theater. And then I went on and got my postgrad elsewhere. And here I am.
What about you, Matt? What's your journey?
Oh man, my journey was a journey. My very first experience with theater was in high school. I had a friend who loved theater and was very into it and convinced me to audition for a play, I think my sophomore year. And I remember walking into the room where they were holding audition and everybody had to get on stage and read something or sing something. And I was like, no, I'm out. Like I just left, didn't even do it. Following year, I went back and I did, and I auditioned and I did 2 shows in high school. I did 2 musicals, The Music Man and something else. Then I went to college and I went in as a business major and then changed my major to sports medicine and then changed it to theater. The whole time I was involved in theater, but I wasn't taking any classes. I kind of knew the group. I was around, and then I finally made the decision to make it my major. I think like my 3rd year of college. I made it out. I graduated, and then I got a job working as in a summer theater at Muhlenberg with very little technical or building experience, and they taught me everything I knew until I got the job at Lehigh about 6 years ago. And I've been building theater ever since I left college, but never really went to college to do that. So, but it's cool because I still end up in the arts. I'm still around them and I still get to act occasionally. But I'm still in them. So how about you, Bailey?
Yeah, so I definitely accidentally stumbled into theater. My family's pretty artsy. My dad's a carpenter. My brother was a fine arts major. But we never, ever did theater. We never went to see shows. We were all athletes. My parents were our coaches. It was always sports. And my parents were very much, as long as you're on the sports teams, you don't really need to get a job in high school. And they were very much, sports are your ticket to college. So I was on a bunch of sports teams, and then I got kicked off my high school softball team. And I was like, well, I have this free time. I don't know what I'm going to do. And my best friend was in stage crew. And I was like, well, I know how to build things. My dad's a carpenter. I did wood shop club and all that. And he was like, that's amazing. We desperately need people who know how to use tools. So I went one day and I was like, these theater nerds, so I don't want to be here. Why are these kids singing all the time? This is awful. And then my first week, I was like, wow, I don't want to do anything else with my life. But I didn't really realize that it was a career path that I could major in until I got to school. I was originally a genetic engineering major. And it was just a very negative environment. I was taking a couple theater classes and I was like, wow, these are the people I want to be around and this is what I want to do. So I changed majors halfway through first semester of my freshman year to just general theater. And then I got my concentration when I transferred schools my junior year. So that's kind of my journey. I had no interest in actually doing theater. I just was like, maybe I can build some cool stuff and whatever. It's an after school activity. That's fine, I guess. And now it's my whole life.
Even when I was in college and I had made my way over to the theater department before I became a major or anything, something I really loved about the theater department was the vibe of the people. I think they're probably one of the most inclusive groups on campus. There was, I don't know, nobody ever felt out of place. You know what I mean? No matter who
Mhm.
I was a jock, right? I even played some football in college. And it was a huge melting pot. And I think I really enjoyed that. It was such a place to feel welcome. And I've always enjoyed that about theater, that it is that place where there's no, I don't know. There's no judgment. There's no
Mhm.
right. It's come hang out and do your thing.
Yeah, that really resonates with me, Matt. I I never really felt at home wherever I was, and then I walked into the building where the theater was on my undergrad campus, and that was, I think, the first time I really felt like I found the tribe I was meant to be with. I found the place I was meant to be, and that experience started with an acting class that was at 8 in the morning, and I remember the grad student who was leading the course. He came in, and it was way too early in the morning for him to be awake for sure. He came in, and it was I mean, all of us, to be honest, we're not happy about it. But he came in and he said, "Okay, we're going to first start this acting class by learning how to relax. So I'm going to turn off the lights. I want you all to lay down and just close your eyes and rest." And then I swear he just left for like a half an hour, and I was like, what kind of a class is this? And it turned into a really great class, and I met some of my best friends in that class. It was just it was a great introduction. A class like no other. And then I discovered that I loved theater so much. I was going to do anything to stay working in the theater if that meant I was house managing or ushering or acting or working backstage or sweeping up and picking up the programs off the floor or whatever it was. I was going to be inside the walls of a theater.
And where did you go for your education for undergrad and beyond?
For my undergrad, I went to the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, which is where I had lived for a number of years. I was, as I said, in my mid-20s when I went back to school after a failed first experiment in college at the age of 18. So I had actually worked as a nursing assistant in nursing homes for several years, and I had also worked as a server and a bartender for a number of years. And it was time to go back to school. So I went back to school at UNL. And then after I graduated with my degree in acting, but my limited experience of it wasn't limited on stage, presented that acting was not going to be the job for me. So I continued to wait tables. But while I was getting my degree in acting, I also discovered stage management and working backstage, particularly stage management, though that really, really spoke to me. That was the job I needed to do. It played both to my creative side and my analytical side, and I was equally balanced. So it was the place to be. But Nebraska didn't have a stage management program. So I just had to pick it up as I went along. I stage managed everything I could find. Anything they would say yes to, they'd let me do. I stage managed it if I had time. So after I graduated, I worked with a summer stock theater, a Shakespeare, a roving Shakespeare team, and then I did a little stint out at Busch Gardens for a season. I stage managed their main stage out in Williamsburg, and then my husband had to My husband was a PhD candidate from Indiana University at the time, and he needed to go do his field research for his dissertation. And he was a British historian. So I had thought of maybe applying to the only MFA program I had heard of, which was at Yale. But when he told me that he had to move over to England, I decided to make sure that I figured out a way to do that too. So I applied to a couple of schools over there, and I was lucky enough to get accepted into the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, which is based in London and is where I got my next 2 years of training in technical theater and stage management.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool journey. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool place.
Bailey, did you have any acting experience on your resume? Did you ever
Oh, no. I feel like I'm one of the only people that didn't start in performance and move to tech. I have been in a single one act that my friend directed because all of the graduating seniors at my high school were in it, and it was a very typecast role for me personally. I played kind of a snarky character, but it was really fun. It was a one act called Honor Bright. It was awesome. But no, I never had any interest in performance at all. I was stage crew, and then I was lighting design at high school, and then when I switched my major from genetic engineering to theater, I was lighting and stage management, which is so funny that I ended up in props. But no, it just never. I even kind of weaseled my way out of taking the acting and directing classes in when I transferred schools. Some of the credits didn't quite work, and then my the college that I graduated from, Montclair State, they were trying to do a new class that was the students who were interested in directing and the students who were interested in design kind of like pairing off in class and doing little mini direction and mini design in class, and they had that count as my directing credit. So I kind of just skirted around all that, which I have no regrets about. I'm happy to do props and paints and costumes and all of that stuff, but I have no interest in being on stage in front of anyone at any point. This podcast is about as far as I'll go in terms of performance.
That's fun. You know, it's funny because I kind of ended up in technical theater the same way because I was very much an actor in college, and Lock Haven had a small department, and until about my third or fourth year, probably my third year, I think what made me declare my major was up until that point, any of the directors were very much they had other jobs. It was a technical director, it was some other staff member that was directing, and it was walk from here to here and be sad, and when you get there, be sadder, and it was very you're not saying your line sad enough. I don't know, it was very puppet like, go here, do this, do that. And then I actually had a professor who showed up my junior year who changed all that for me. And, it was very much like, no, you have decisions to make. You're a person. I told you to do that, but does it make sense to you? You feel it looks awkward. Why is it awkward? Why don't you like that? And it was the first chance I had to be an actor, right? And think about my words and my thoughts and my presence on stage. And he opened up this whole world to me that never existed. It was very robotic until that point. And once he did that, I was like, oh man, this is it, right? I'm going to be an actor. I got out of college and I didn't pursue it enough. That's totally on me. But I was lucky enough to fall into a job working as a carpenter. And I was very lucky to end up in a place where they took me in and taught me everything I needed to know on the job. And it became a career for me. But I thought I was always going to be an actor, and I still get to act, but I had zero technical experience leaving college, and I got it all on the job.
It's a really interesting way to learn what is now your career.
Right.
Did your school didn't really have a tech program, or you just weren't involved in it?
I just wasn't. We had a Theater 123, so you could take it up to 3 times for credit. But every time I took it, I got credit for being on stage. So I never had to be in the shop. I never had to look at a light. I didn't learn any side of that. And if I did take those classes, they weren't done in such a way that I learned
Yeah.
much from them.
So what was that like? Like having a job that you have no experience in or training in? Like how was it terrifying, or did you feel supported by enough by the people that it
A
felt
little
okay?
bit. One of my first memories of working at Muhlenberg, not knowing what I was doing, was I was trying to cut something on the table saw by myself. And I think I was doing that thing, where you like, I was taking off an eighth of an inch instead of measuring it out to what it needed to be.
Oh
And
yeah,
then,
yeah, yeah.
right, so that I had it all backwards, and it wasn't working. And the ATD came out yelling, "Turn it off. What are you doing? Turn it right." And I was like, "Oh no." Like I was terrified. And, I think at that moment on, I kind of realized what I was, what and who I was. But I always felt very, from that point on, taken care of. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
Matt, we want you to do this. Do you know what that is? And I could say no. And they would walk me through that process. And spending, I think, almost 4 years there as summer theater and then as overhire during the actual year, I got 4 years of education / work
Mm-hmm.
from them. And I learned, by my last year there as summer theater, I was the head carpenter or co-head carpenter for the master for the summer program, reading blueprints, running teams, checking scenery. Like, I had come a long way in 4 years, and then
Should have
came
just
here.
skipped the whole college thing and just did the
Right.
work.
Totally learned on the fly. Yeah.
Okay, what else do we got going on here? All right, so everyone switched majors in our group. Everyone had kind of an untraditional college experience. We have someone going back to college. I transferred twice, actually.
I
That
changed my major at least
like
twice.
6 times. Yeah. I mean, we kind of just got like what made everyone want to work in the arts. I guess what is keeping you in the arts?
What is keeping me in the arts? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, like once you
Yeah.
decided, once you're like, all right, I guess this is what I'm doing now. Or how long have you been at Lehigh too? I guess is part of that question.
Oh, well, let's do so the journey. Let's see. Let's start there. Well, I graduated from Lambda in 2002. So most of you were in elementary school at that point. And we thought, let's live on the West Coast, let's live on the East Coast. I wanted to be a Broadway stage manager. Ultimately, that was my goal. I had worked in the West End a little bit in my time in London, and I knew that I loved it. And this job at Lehigh sat there next to me for about two and a half weeks before I applied, because it said assistant production manager, and I was like, that's not what I do. Or I mean, I kind of do that. I've had the training a little bit, but I really want to be a stage manager. So I went ahead and applied, and they were crazy enough to not only, just, they called me, they interviewed me, they brought me over from London for an interview, and I thought that was pretty fantastic. They were really well situated to New York. I thought at the time I wasn't planning to have any kids. So I thought, this is going to be great. We're so close to Broadway, we'll be able to go all the time. And eventually when we've saved up enough money, we can move to the city and we can follow that dream. In the meantime, I can learn French. So then when I want my job with Cirque du Soleil, which is what my other goal was, to go stage manage with Cirque du Soleil, but you have to know French. Lehigh seemed perfect for all of that. So I've been here at Lehigh for 18 years as of today's the 2nd. So on the 7th of October will be my 18th year anniversary.
Did you come over while your husband was still working in London, or?
I did, but only for the interview. He needed 1 year in London to do his research, and he got the benefit of my student visa since I was at Lambda for 2 years. So we got 2 years and a little more over in London. if we could have eked out 3 more years, we would have stayed for sure.
Understood.
For sure. We would have done the whole dual passport thing and dual citizenship, and like definitely lived over there for the rest of our lives, I think. And then we both moved over here, and here we've been ever since. So, Bailey, how did you end up at Lehigh?
Never thought I'd be a person. I mean, not that I've really
Full stop. I never thought I'd be a person.
I am a robot. So I kind of left the nest right at college. I went to State University of New York at Fredonia because my parents said if I went to a college more than 8 hours away, they would cut me off completely. So I looked at colleges that were exactly 8 hours away. So I ended up in Western New York. And it was great. I loved it. I mean, I found theater there. I found my love of props there. But it didn't really fit what I was looking for. So I transferred to Montclair just because it was closer to New York City and there was more freelancing opportunity. And a lot of my professors were professionals working in the city. So they would bring their students along to help with whatever they were doing. And I was doing a lot of summer stock in carpentry and painting and just different things, different internships in between. So I never really stayed in the same place for more than 9 months since I was about 17 years old. And I thought that's what my life was going to be, do a season at a theater, do a summer stock somewhere else. And before I was at Lehigh, I was living in Alaska, working at Perseverance Theater out in Juneau. And it was definitely a learning experience. But I came back to the East Coast because I was really far from my friends. I was really far from my family. And I was like, okay, I'll come back to the East Coast. I'll work at like college or something. I'll do the first place I've stayed at I'll stay there for like 2 years because I've never done that. I've only stayed at places 9 months or 3 months. So I applied, I got an apartment and I was like, okay, this place is pretty good. I get to do paints, I get to do props. But yeah, it was just a job application. I was applying for a bunch of jobs all up and down the East Coast, about an hour and a half from my hometown. I'm from New Jersey originally. So I thought that would just be the perfect opportunity. And this is my 4th year here. So that's a little bit longer than I was intending to stay. But it's been it's a very comfortable place to work. And I really like my apartment. I met my significant other here in Bethlehem. So the Lehigh Valley in particular now has a lot of special meaning to me. And Matt here is a local boy.
I am. I have another question for you.
Sure.
Real quick. So you do both paints and props. Mm-hmm. Do you care for one more than the other? Do you do both because the job description says you have to do both, or how do you feel about? I mean, like your paints and props. What's that for you?
Yeah. So my degree is in scene design actually, but I never really wanted to do scene design. It was just the closest degree to what I wanted to do. Not many schools have a prop degree, but I really love doing both. This is a question a little further down, but my favorite aspects of theater is the variation in what I do. I have spent most of quarantine working at my side job that I just recently left, and I was doing the exact same thing every day, and it was driving me out of my mind. I love in theater that I do a different thing every single day that I walk into work. And even, I'm sure Elizabeth can attest to that, she does the Nutcracker every year. It's a different experience every single time. Yeah. So I love those challenges. Props is just so weird to me. Everything is like made out of garbage or some random thing. My high school stage crew, we had a shirt and on the back it said it's fun to do the impossible, which is what I feel like I do a lot with props. My scene painting work is a little more tangible. There's a little more of a like a goal achievement. Like you notice it more. When I look at a set, I'm like, oh yeah, there's my painting. Where sometimes I could spend 20 hours on a prop for an actor to like literally just walk across the stage with it. I'm like, oh, you didn't even see it. So I like the work of props more, but I like the pride I get in my scene painting.
I have a question for Elizabeth as well, and if I'm jumping around, I apologize.
Whatever. We're just chatting. It's a podcast.
Right. Stage management is hard. I'm going to just say that in my mind. I can't imagine it's an easy thing to do. There must be something. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of things you love about it. Or no? Am I wrong? Do you not? I guess my question.
It's the way you phrase that. It's like there must be something good about it.
Please
I
tell me,
mean,
because I wouldn't do it. What do you enjoy about stage management? That's my question.
you're in charge.
Okay.
I mean, there's truth in that. I like being in charge, as I'm sure you are both aware. I have a slightly bossy nature. I like to.
Where's the horse? Where's the horse?
It's more than just being in charge, though. I like to organize. One of the meters that I always ask my class to measure by is who loves office supplies, and if they raise their hands, I know they're in the right place for sure. I got into stage management because it's creative and it's analytical. That organization, those office supplies, the smell of a new eraser. I'm always
nerd
walking around with I'm always walking around with a pen and a piece of paper ready to jot down a detail.
Do you have a favorite brand of pen?
I very recently discovered that I like fountain pens, which is a very sexy pen. I mean, I have a lot of favorites. Most of my favorites are in the gel category, the gel pen category for sure. I love it because it's different every day. I think Bailey's already expressed that. That's what's so great about live theater. And I've kind of transformed it into this event management, production management thing that I do. I get to I get to plan and help sort out all the logistical patterns and thinking and details, which is what I'm really good at. And I get to kind of like put it in order and make it happen. And, you mentioned the Nutcracker, which I have done now 11 seasons of the Nutcracker here. And that's like over 100 shows. And it's exciting every time. Every time I do the house call, when the house transforms, every single time I get chills. I get excited energy every time. My palms sweat. Even though I know the call, even though I've called it over and over, it's still exhilarating to me. And the first school show of the week is always the best. The moment you bring down the lights and 1,000 little children's voices go up because the lights have just gone out, and it's very exciting. Like it's just so electrifying to me. It's just magic, and I get to help be a part of that, and I get to help present the best that we can. It's just passion and love and sweat and tears that goes with it. You led like it was going to be a bad thing, but it's just not. It's not a bad thing. I love it.
Well, I know she could turn around and be like, "So Matt, you build things. Okay,
let's talk about
you're
that.
in a dusty shop all day. So like, what could you possibly like about that? Tell the people how deranged you are to enjoy your job."
We do not have enough time for that. Something else I'll ask you quick, Elizabeth.
Sure.
I'll put this out there for people who don't know what a stage manager is.
Oh, no.
So my question is, do you call a lot of shows? Because so a stage manager, and do you want to explain that, since it is what calling a show?
No, I mean, a stage manager does more than call a show. We organize all the details. We run rehearsals. We keep people on time. We call breaks. We announce things. We communicate. I think of a stage manager chiefly as a communicator of a lot of information, whether it's in a queue calling situation or in a sending out an email full of notes situation or announcing changes verbally in the room. We communicate across all sorts of platforms. Yes, I have so many war stories about calling live shows in Zoellner. Stephen Sametz with the Lehigh University Choir loves to put on a show that's more than just a bunch of people on stage with, singers and maybe an orchestra. He very often will put together a theatrical program that I get to call. The trick of that is, in this particular instance, is that I don't get to rehearse with it. So I'm calling a lot of stuff based on music, which is something I can read and I'm fine with. And it's typically in a different language. And I may or may not have experience in those languages. But one of my early college choices was actually to study languages because I felt like I had an affinity for languages. I was raised from the ages of 2 to 7 in Mexico City. So I spoke Spanish and I spoke English fluently. So I had an early introduction in my head to languages. So I kind of have an affinity toward new languages. Anyway, he hands me, scores that have languages I've never seen. I haven't really studied or read, but I'm able to follow both musically and through the language of a song. And so I call a lot of his shows. I get one rehearsal and then we do the show.
Wow.
And then there are other times when guest artists will come through. We have the guest artist series in Baker Hall, which is, our Broadway bus and truck shows, or we have a lot of bands and orchestras and dance and all sorts of things come through. There was one show in particular that came through, and in their contract, it said they would need a stage manager. And we've seen that on contracts before, and we kind of just didn't think much of it because typically shows that are on tour come with technicians. But this particular show came without a technician. They had a bunch of drummers and a bunch of dancers. And the lead drummer, who was in charge of the show, came with a list of the program, sat down with our tech team at 2 p.m. for an 8:00 show. And I was production manager for it that night. And kind of said, hey, so we have all of these cues. And he laid out this whole plot of cues that we literally wrote into this little program handout that he'd given us. I wrote a whole bunch of cues. He kind of described, because a lot of the cues were like blackout suddenly at the end of this dance or whatever. He gave us all these cues. I drew little stick figures of what he kind of described was going to have happen on stage. He and I then went out to the lobby and watched a video of the show. He kind of kept skipping through parts. He's like, well, this is kind of what this is going to look like. And this is what that's going to look like. And, oh, I forgot to tell you about these cues. And he kept telling me all these cues he had forgotten to mention. So it's 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I went into the lighting, to our lighting coordinator at the time. And I said, hey, I've got all of these cues. She's like, not right now. Cause she was busy programming all of the light cues, frantically in hopes of getting done before the show started at 8. So I did not get to meet with her again until we were actually in the show. I was calling the show live with an audience, a show I'd never heard, never rehearsed, never seen, didn't have a script to, just little stick figures made of pencil drawings on my page. I called this whole show. I kept telling the lighting person, hey, I've got a blackout at the end of this. It's a 0 count. It goes out in a snap. She's like, oh, I don't have that. And you'd hear her say, go to blind. And she actually had a second person in the booth with her helping her program the lighting live while we were doing the show with an audience. And we made it through. The programming director, Deborah, came backstage and had no idea that had just happened and was really pleased to hear that we had survived in one piece. So
that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, I get to call shows. Not always
awesome.
By choice.
Or with lots of rehearsal time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Everyone, audience, you'll notice that Matt is the quiet one of our group. So we're going to ask him some questions. All right, Matt, what do you do at Lehigh? What's your favorite part of theater? Tell us. Tell us the inside scoop.
What keeps you coming back every day? Horse Winnie.
Yeah, right. Okay. So I am the assistant technical director at Lehigh University, and I assist the technical director on the shows. I'm building the shows and making sure that we're ready for opening. My responsibilities have grown. I came with, again, I did a lot of learning on the fly a little bit. I had very little experience with drafting and how to do so, or how to work a budget or make a budget, or work a build calendar. And not that any of those were necessarily my responsibilities, but when I first started, I said I want to learn how to do those things. So my boss at the time took his time to show me how to draft, and would let me draft things and let me work on a budget. And he taught me all the aspects of technical directing that again I didn't really need to know, but I wanted to know, and I'm now glad that I do. And what keeps me coming back is, I think we've all said the same thing, right? Is that it's always different, and I think that's something I've always wanted out of my career. I never wanted to, and I don't know who does this, but like I was like, I'm not going to sit behind a desk all day. That's not going to be what I do, right? And it's not what I do. I am very active. I spend a lot of time in the shop building, making drawings. The coolest thing is always seeing it all come together. You know, on opening night, that the set is built and everything's painted and the actors are ready, and it's such a cool experience to see it go from nothing to done. And
so your favorite part is when it's done.
Yeah, my favorite part is finishing the job. Yes.
Yeah.
And then I get to watch the actors do their job. But it's fun. It keeps me active, and I enjoy that.
So if you weren't in theater, what would you be doing?
Not sitting behind a desk. I don't. That's a good question, and that's a hard question to answer, because it's all I've done since leaving college, and you know, it was my major. It's not like I know a lot of people will double major or minor in theater, but I don't have a degree in anything else. You know, I got pretty far into my sports medicine degree, which I enjoyed it. I was always a science fan growing up, and I always enjoyed sports growing up. And to me, it made sense that I kind of combined the two. But at some point, I was just like, no, I want to do theater. So had I never been introduced to theater, maybe I would still be doing sports medicine. But I like that question, but it's really tough to answer, because so much of my life is the arts. You know, something I have been doing for a very long time is I've been involved in the martial arts since I was 7 or 8 years old. So I have over 20, 25 years worth of experience in the martial arts, and something I think I'd love to do would be to teach. If I could have a school and teach full time, and hang out at the dojo and train and teach and work out, that would be a really cool day for me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with that. My answer is, if I were not in theater, I would be running a martial arts school. How's that?
That's awesome. That's so cool. Do you think martial
really
arts,
cool.
like what you do in martial arts, do you think it has any like ties to theater? Do you, like, other than the physical aspect? Like, I mean, you're a very like calm person. I know martial arts focuses a lot on like your mental strength, I guess. You're a very like even keeled person.
Well, thank you. For sure. You know, a lot of what we do and a lot of what we say, I don't know how many people out there know the original Karate Kid or the Cobra Kai, right? Strike first, strike hard, no mercy, is very antithetical to everything I've always learned. And I think what most people learn, we train not to fight, right? You don't want to be in a fight. And we're not trained to kill. You defend yourself. I think theater has helped me. It's a tough call to say which one brought to which one, but I was very lucky to I had a great instructor growing up, and he taught me a lot. And as I grew up and became a teenager, 17, 18, 19, I was a brown and black belt. So he was teaching me how to run classes and how to teach kids. So I have a lot of experience working with adults, working with kids, teaching things that aren't always concrete, some abstract thought processes. And a lot of times I do it on the fly, like I show up at a class and I see who's there and I don't know what we're going to cover. So I think there's a certain amount of theater that crosses over into my martial arts, where I feel comfortable in front of people, and I don't know if that was always true. I grew up as a very shy kid, but being on stage, being in front of people, taking all the acting classes, probably coupled with the amount of teaching I was doing at karate, I think has made me very comfortable in front of people. And even with the kids here, like I'm not an instructor per se, but I work with the students a lot in the shop, and I teach them how to use the tools, how to mark and measure, how to build things. And I have a lot of patience, I think, and I'm really good at finding different ways to say things. So if what I say to a student doesn't click, I'm usually pretty good at trying to come from another side or another angle or another thought process. And again, it's tough to say which one came from where, but I feel like they blend very well for me in terms of my teaching and
Hmm.
my attitude towards teaching and students in general.
That's awesome. That's really great. You are a really good teacher. You're very patient.
Thank you. I don't always feel that way, so I'm glad it comes off that way.
It does. It does. What about you, Elizabeth? What would you be doing if it wasn't theater?
Linguist. No, I'm not.
You know, independently wealthy, is that a thing? That might be the thing I would want to do. Travel, daydream, write, read.
Pet dogs.
You know, my own thing. If I could do anything else, I think I would probably open up like a cafe or
Ooh.
a restaurant, or a restaurant by day and a bar by night, or something
Mhm.
fun, something in like, I think I'd move to Vermont.
Do a little
And
homesteading, little farm to table cafe, maybe.
oh,
Oh,
absolutely. I have talked about the dream of having a commune
Hmm.
um, with that kind of a lifestyle with my niece and my
Hmm.
nephew. I can cook and I can create recipes. I think I would own a cafe. I want one of those little quaint cafes in Vermont, that people
Yeah,
visit.
yeah. Little bed and
And
breakfast.
yeah, a little something a little more down and chill.
I like to cook.
Um,
So if you ever need an extra person to cook, let me know. If you
yeah,
I would definitely
that's
work for a business run by Elizabeth. She's got all the skills. I would be like, yeah, this is gonna succeed. Like,
Yay. Great. Well, now we just have to get a place to open, and we'll
yeah.
we'll do it. Yeah, I think that's probably what I would do, because I worked in the food industry for about 10 years before I graduated with theater. And I think that and I've been doing theater ever since, because I'm so lucky. Um but I did a lot of food service on the way, and I really have I just have a love of like that atmosphere
Yeah.
that brings people
Hmm.
together and share. And it's a lot like the atmosphere of theater, right? Where we bring people together to share goodness and joy and love and the things that we love. Good energy, good vibes, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
I'm very hippie that way. That's why
That's true. That's very
Vermont.
true.
nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that.
And what about you, Bailey? What would you be doing if you weren't locked in a theater?
It's interesting. It's not a question I really thought about until COVID hit. And I wasn't doing theater. It wasn't something I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do forever. But once I had a moment to step back, so theater was definitely my first love in terms of a career and things like that. But as I've gotten older, I am very, very into sustainability and climate justice and things like that. So anything I would want to be doing are kind of theater adjacent. I would love to work, if I wasn't doing paints and props directly, I would love to work with the Broadway Green Alliance and convert theaters into more green and sustainable places, or with a company called Earth Angel, which you hire them on like movie sets and TV sets and commercials to green up your whole production, which really appeals to me. But I'm definitely very interested in like eco-friendly and sustainable wedding planning or event planning. So I would definitely want to start my own business.
I was just going to say, you can hit me up for that too, because I could
Yeah.
definitely help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
significant other is really wants to do like catering and private dinner parties. He's a chef going to culinary school. So that would be perfect. He would have this vegan catering system. I would have a eco-friendly event. We'd be one-stop shopping, and we really want to eventually, our dream is to homestead and have a place where we could host events on our farm or whatever. That's all farm to
Yeah.
table. That's the goal. Have a farm to table food truck, something like that. I love the aspect of like designing a menu and coming up with a theme and the social media outreach and everything. But a lot of people think sustainability has to be very bland and vanilla and granola, and I definitely think, the most sustainable option was not to have events at all, but we're humans. We have to have fun and party. So I would really like to bring the eco-friendly aspect to that. So that's what I would be doing. Sustainability is definitely like currently my number one passion in life. Kind of replaced theater, kind of knocked it down the list a little bit.
Okay, so my nephew does the farming.
Mm-hmm.
My niece does the salmon fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Your significant other does the chef work.
Mm-hmm.
We dream up the menu plan. You come up with sustainability. Matt, what are you going to do with this like group that we've just
Matt
formed?
cooks. He can be Nick's sous
You
chef.
cook?
I could, or I could be security if you want somebody at the door. I could bounce.
He could teach mindfulness classes via
Yes.
martial arts.
Very zen, right? We could.
There you go.
He'll build the whole cafe.
Are you all averse to like moving to Vermont then?
Yeah, this is the start of the commune. Forget the podcast series. Sitting Ovation, the commune.
Moving on.
We have equipment, we'll travel.
Yeah. All right, that's our show, guys. We're going up to Vermont. See you later.
I love it. Yeah. Would you take that step further and go to like maybe Spain or Europe or something?
Yeah. I want to live in a yurt. Can we have a yurt?
Of course.
You can have a yurt.
Last summer, I've spent time in a yurt, and then last summer I got to experience a geodesic dome. So that's another option. Yeah,
I'm on board with that.
Yeah,
all the houses on my Pinterest board are like 90% greenhouse, 10% house. So like,
I love this.
Yeah. I just want to save the planet and like do it in an artistic way.
All right, we got to merge up on that one. That's that's our next side project.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Can we have dramatic piano?
Yes, dramatic piano.
Just for a moment.
Cueing it in.
All right. So, what does the world without art look like to you?
It's sad. It's gray. There are the puppies from those commercials with the one eye.
Oh man.
With no dramatic piano to get you to donate to those puppies.
Right.
No, I don't know. I like to think about that a lot. One of my original ideas for going to the podcast was like, what would that look like? What would commercials look like? What would movies? I mean, we wouldn't have movies, but if they didn't have trained actors and trained designers, it would just be, art is so fulfilling in ways that you don't even like notice a lot of the time. If you're in a room with the wrong light bulbs, you feel it. You feel like, ugh, this fluorescent, like it makes me feel like anxious. So even like these little simple things, art is just in every part of our world. And we're just influenced all the time, whether we notice it or not.
Yeah.
Or give you things to think about. Be provocative or provoking.
Yeah.
This is something that I feel very passionate about. It bothers me on a real level when people are always like, oh, well, we'll take the money from the arts or defund the arts, or we can cut the music program, because I don't think people think that through. Because there is so much the arts do that I think we all take for granted. What does that mean? Cut the arts, or we're going to take money from the arts? Would you have TV? Would you have commercials? Would you have movies? You couldn't turn on the radio and listen to music. You couldn't. There's just so many things that it does, and I feel like there have been studies done. I didn't do my research, where they say that art or music can enhance so many other skills in science and math, and because learning how to play the piano isn't simply notes, right? There's timing involved, and there's all these other aspects that play into it. And this might be more for the other podcast, but we have such a vision of school, right? You need to learn these facts, and then you need to go out in the world and do these things with these facts. But not everybody is built that way, or not everybody works that way. And wouldn't it be crazy if you spent the first 5 or 6 years of your life like learning what you were good at or what you enjoyed, and then maybe spent the next 5 or 6 years learning that, as opposed to having to find extra time to do it, or finding out that you love it when you're 20 or 25 and then trying to start a career in it. A world without art is bleak, I think, in a lot of ways. And it's always concerning when I hear that that's where they're going to take money from, or like the Lock Haven Theater Department, I think, basically just got the axe because they have to pay for all these other buildings and other people's salaries, and so the arts are going, and it's a shame, and it worries me a lot. Worries me, but that specifically.
And I think part of that too is, we're just talking about like the positive parts of art, but I think a lot of people discredit the ways that art impact us in different ways. If you look at different like revolutions throughout history and protest signs, people want to make art. They have this like inherent desire to do that. Um, and also looking at like different plays and documentaries or movies that might talk about a difficult subject or topic, like it makes you feel a certain way and it brings awareness in a way that you might not have reached that person before. Someone might not want to hear you talking about climate change, for example, but if you show them a movie or a play that is like a real story of someone going through that and how it affects someone on a micro level, if you're looking at one person's journey, like you might get impacted in a different way through this visual storytelling that is so powerful. And it's definitely a different way to reach people other than what we do in theater and art and music. Like you put the humanity back into it, which is really important.
Yeah. I think I like your point about things being taken for granted. I think we all took a lot for granted, and I think this great pause has given us a lot of different perspective. I'm hopeful that it's given us a different perspective of how important this is to our lives. It's also very worrisome the way that the world is going right now. But I like to hold optimism. Great things can come out of things like this, moments like this. I know that I've developed a new perspective in the last several months. And I wouldn't have had time to do that inward looking or that inward development if I hadn't had this pause, to stop and sit with my own thoughts and listen to others and to listen to myself. I think it's been a huge gift. And also, I'm not sure how I'm ever going to be able to get back to working on the weekends.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the one thing. I won't mind it when the work is back, because I do miss bringing people joy. That expression of joy that they come away from a show with. It's very fulfilling. Yeah, no, I can't imagine what would happen if our world went silent with art.
And I think too, a lot of people have this innate desire to create or be creative on some level. Not everyone's a Picasso or a Mozart, but I think there's something so true about the human soul, right? We always say we're built for so much more than working and paying bills, and we live in a society that doesn't foster that. And I think even trying to find the time just to go out on your own and appreciate a sunset or draw a picture or whatever your outlet is that you don't get to do, we're not, our lives aren't built around having any time for that. And I think that's a sad thing.
Yeah, I remember seeing some picture on the internet or something, and it was all about how we live in this society where like unless you're really good at something in the arts, like it's not worth doing. So unless you're like an amazing painter, our society is like don't paint. Like no, you're not very good at it. Even though that is the most like human thing, is to want to. Storytelling is like the oldest art form. People were painting on cave walls. Do you think like the other cavemen were like, stick figure's not very good, Grog, erase it? Like it's our nature to want to dance and sing and make music and create art, and we've kind of like pigeonholed ourselves in this way of like, oh well, unless you're going to do it for a career and make money off of it, and that's the big thing, making money off of it, then it's not worth doing, even though that is like the thing that feeds our souls.
Yeah, that's the other thing that I wrote down was the capitalist drive, right? That capitalism is driving this and a lot of the decision making. So that's a totally different podcast, though.
So tune in.
Yeah.
I really love How Do You Want to Impact the World? I feel like we're on that vein of like you as an artist, or you as the owner of a dojo, or you as the owner of a cafe. What legacy do you want to leave behind? How do you want to impact the world?
One of the things that that's really affected me is uh, in this new world order is the style of teaching that I'm doing now, and how I've had to shift to this online structure, which is creative, and it's making me think about how I approach things, and it's good. It's absolutely good for me to restructure how I'm doing something. But I think in my rush to do that and make it right and kind of launch this brand new class, approach, um, it's easy to forget as we do that pivot to online. It's super easy for us to forget that there are students who are really stressed out and needing or missing that human contact. Our community that is theater, particularly the community of our classrooms, the community of our rehearsal spaces, etc. Slow down and take a breath. The impact of just stopping and saying, hey, it's okay to feel stressed. I'm stressed too, and be real. I want the generations that I get the gift of talking to in my classrooms and the people I get to interact with, I want them to know that they can just take a breath if they're stressed out. I worry about people who are worried that they have to put up a facade of happiness or success. Life is a struggle, and I think that if I can impart that to others as they start upon their embarking of their journey, I think that would be what I want them to do. I want them to realize that they have to have fun, find the joy, let it go, and don't take themselves so seriously. Those are my messages.
Those are good messages.
Yeah.
Those are important ones. What about you, Matt? How do you want to impact the world? What legacy are you leaving behind?
I think it's very similar to what Elizabeth said. I want people to remember the joy, the laughter, the fun times, and that you need to make time for that, right? You need to be joyful. You need to have fun, not take yourself so seriously. You need to dance and be crazy and be wacky every once in a while, and not be so concerned what others might think. And joy, is the biggest thing. I hope that my students walk away knowing that I always try to end on a positive, a light note, a fun note, and make some dad joke or something, because even though we're there to discuss the things we're there to discuss, it doesn't. We're still having fun. We're still happy. There's still joy to be had, and I think that's what I'd like to be left behind and be remembered for. Would be the laughter. What about you, Bailey? What's your message to the world?
I know it's a hard two acts to follow there. I mean, I feel like the way that I want to impact the world is that I want to inspire people to feel like they can make a difference in their lives and in the world. I want people to be able to stand up to things that they don't think are right, even if it's hard and even if it means doing something scary. I've done that a lot in my career, of pointing out different injustices that I've saw, and I have had, negative repercussions for some of those, but I want to impact other people. I want people to come see the shows that I'm working on and walk away with a message or a deep thought, or, I want them to feel changed in some way when they leave the theater of a production that I've worked on. I like doing shows that, have really like deep meanings behind them. For that, I really feel like I'm in a medium where I can connect to people and get messages across, and people will listen because they're paying for seats to listen. So I feel like it's really important that people use their platform and even their relationships with other people to make a difference, to find something that you care about, whether it's politics or climate change or any issue. I feel like people need to just have an issue that they care about and work towards it. And I hope that through the work that I do, because it is entertainment and it is art and it is, a fun night out at the theater, I hope they can get all of those things and get the joy of seeing a show, but also be changed in a way that they want to keep going with whatever they just saw.
Yeah, hear, hear. Hear, hear.
I know. I feel like I need to end on a positive note after that. I'm trying to
Right.
think
We
about
got-
any
we
good
got-
Yeah,
we
stories.
that
got a
was
little-
too heavy.
I know
got a
all
little
of
deep
my
there.
yeah, dramatic
We were
piano.
we were all up here, and
Yeah.
then that changed.
I know. Let me think. I feel like sharing the story. I mean, I don't know. I feel like sharing the story of Matt and Trevor and myself working on the floor of Godspell, and we had like the best day. And it was so fun. We were laying out the floor, and then literally as we finished, we were like, "That looks so great!" And then we got the email that like they weren't coming back for spring break as we were painting, like as we were starting to lay out the floor, and it was like,
Well, it was fun. Like, right? Like,
We did a good job.
I have some fun ones from acting. Right? I was at a rehearsal one time, and we were doing a show, and the director was like trying to get us to emote different things or whatever, right? And she's like, "You and this person are at a hospital, and you just lost someone." And so our goal was to like interact with the other groups on stage with this. This was our motivation, right? And I kept going up to people, and I was like, "Yeah, I lost my son. He's about this big. I don't know where he went. He ran away. Blah blah blah." And like, I get 2 or 3 groups into this with my partner, and she was like, "Oh wow." When the director said you lost someone, I thought she meant like they died. And I was like, "Oh, see, that makes a lot more sense." Oopsie. I got a part in a musical once. I was in Seussical the musical. I cannot sing. Let's make that clear right here. I'm not a singer. And the reason I was in the show is because I was one of the Wickersham brothers, and one of the Wickershams had left school for whatever reason. And so like within a week, I had a costume made, and I was on stage, and I wasn't singing, but I was given this giant foam banana to like play around with, right? Because I had no lines, I couldn't sing, so I'm just running like on and off stage with this giant banana. It was a very weird experience to be in a musical and not sing. It was
My very first time on stage, I was a pickpocket in our every other year of the Christmas Carol. It was a 2,000 seat house. It was like twice the size of Baker Hall. And I remember standing right behind the scrim at the beginning, and I was just like shaking, like, crazy, because I was so nervous. But as soon as we started moving, like everything was fine. Then 2 years later, I was the stage manager on that. And that was the biggest cast I think I ever dealt with animals. And I had 17 people on headset. I had like 120 people in the cast. And I was an undergrad student, and there was no stage management program. And this was just like me out of the box doing stage management for fun. My 5th show, we had animals on stage. And the director that year decided he was going to present the nativity scene. And we'd have this like musical moment, literally this like nativity scene. So we had hired a donkey to come and be in that nativity scene with us. And the laborer was going to take this donkey across the stage. A week or 2 before we went into tech, the donkey that had been hired gave birth to a baby. So the baby was not to be left behind. It could not be separated from its mother because it was so young. And during the street scene one night with the audience, this moment happened. We paused, and the baby pooped on the stage. The baby pooped on the stage. And then when they started moving again, or somewhere, I don't remember exactly the order of things, but at any rate, the baby then stepped in the poop and slipped and like did the splits. Little baby was slipping around in the poop going across the stage. It was a priceless moment. And this is one of the reasons I tell people when they think about hiring animals for the stage, maybe not a great idea. Oh, I've got a great story about the last year we did the gala, actually, a couple years ago. Vanessa Williams was here, and she and her entourage got into the freight elevator with me. And the elevator at that time was in a finicky space. It was not cooperative. on a multitude of occasions where you would be in the elevator and the elevator would go to a floor and then it would stop working and it would drop to the very bottom floor and you'd be trapped there until somebody reset the elevator. So I made the radio call that I needed the elevator to be reset because we had been dropped to the bottom floor and I had 14 people, the entire band. I was taking them up to the stage to enter and start the show. And to make matters worse, the show had started because that particular year we had a 7-minute video intro. So I got onto the elevator and we were at the dressing room level. We went down to the very bottom instead of the top after it didn't work. They reset the elevator and I said, yay. And we all started going up to the top. I took a selfie with the 14 other people in the elevator with me. And we got to the top, we all kind of cheered, and then the doors didn't open, and it went straight back to the bottom. Yeah. It was a real moment of, okay, now what do we do?
Yeah.
And the 7-minute video on stage was running out. So we sat there for a moment and decided that this was going to be our Spinal Tap moment. For those of you who are familiar with Spinal Tap, when they get lost in the depths of the building and they can't find the stage. I took them out and there's a stairwell that goes up into the loading dock. We had to exit into the sub-basement, took the big long stairs, which is about 2.5 flights of stairs all at once into the loading dock. We walked back into the building through the stage door and then onto stage just in the nick of time. Like 14 people and I look back at Vanessa Williams and I was like, hey, have you ever had a Spinal Tap moment like this? I tried to make it as funny as I could.
And that, everyone, is the magic of live theater.
It always seems to come together.
Yeah.
Right?
I know every show has a moment like that.
Well, thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Lehigh University Department of Theater for sponsoring this podcast.
Our next show will be Theater XYZ on October 28th, a podcast with 3 generations talking about different issues in the world of theater.
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at LU Theater. That's theater ending with an RE. LU Theater Podcast Series. We'll catch you next time.